£1,367 a month is what the average private renter now pays in the United Kingdom, and in London, that number climbs to £2,253. As of March 2025, more than 131,000 households sit stuck in temporary accommodation, and that figure includes over 164,000 children. But across this country, from the Scottish Highlands down to the canals cutting through central London, from medieval almshouses to villages built by chocolate dynasties, there are communities where your biggest monthly expense doesn't shrink, it vanishes. These are the top 10 rent-free and near-rent-free communities in the United Kingdom, places where people live right now for a sliver of what the rest of the country hands over, or in a few cases, for absolutely nothing. Some of these have operated for nearly 1,000 years, and others were dreamed up in the last decade. The one sitting at number 1 just collected the most prestigious architecture award in Britain. Before we get into this, subscribe to the channel and tap that like button because the algorithm rewards curiosity. And trust me, you'll want to come back. This isn't surface-level content. By the time we reach number 1, you'll either be rethinking your entire housing strategy or wondering why nobody mentioned these places to you before. Let's start the countdown. Number 10. Property guardianship. The modern hack hiding in plain sight. Right now, across the United Kingdom, thousands of people live in former police stations, abandoned schools, disused office blocks, and converted churches, and their housing costs start at £60 a week. The model works like this. When a building sits empty, it attracts vandalism, squatters, and slow decay. Rather than spend heavily on security, property owners partner with guardianship companies who place vetted individuals inside the building. These guardians pay a license fee rather than rent, which creates a completely different legal arrangement from a standard tenancy. VPS Guardians, formerly known as Camelot, charges fees starting from as low as £60 per week, roughly £260 a month. A social enterprise launched in 2011 sets its fees between £325 and £880 a month, but adds something unusual to the deal, requiring every guardian to volunteer 12 hours per month in the local community. That organization alone has housed over 2,000 people since it started. Other operators filling this space include live-in guardians, global guardians, ad hoc property management, and LOWE. Estimates from 2017 put the number of active property guardians across the UK at between 5,000 and 7,000, managed by 20 to 40 different companies, and that figure has almost certainly climbed since. Here's where it gets interesting, and where it gets uncomfortable. Guardians hold licenses, not tenancies. That distinction carries real weight. Standard renter protections don't apply, and the typical notice period runs just 28 days. You could be settled into a converted Victorian schoolhouse in Zone 2 one month and hunting for somewhere new the next. Controversy has followed the model too. In 2022, guardians with staged protests over fee increases reaching as high as 113%. That tension sits at the core of property guardianship. You get London accommodation at a fraction of the market rate, but security is the price you pay. No long-term guarantee exists, and no stability clause protects you. Your home lasts only as long as the building stays empty. But for young professionals, creatives, and people who value flexibility over permanence, guardianship remains one of the most accessible ways to slash housing costs in the most expensive cities in the country. When the average London rent sits at £2,253 a month and you're paying £260, the appeal becomes obvious. And if property guardianship represents the modern angle, our next entry runs on something far older, far stranger, and involves a lifestyle most people associate with holidays rather than permanent addresses. Number 9. Canal boat continuous cruising. The floating life across 2,000 miles of British waterways. Over 2,000 miles of canals and rivers wind through England and Wales, all managed by the Canal and River Trust. Roughly 35,000 licensed boats sit on those waterways, and an estimated 30,000 people now live aboard full-time across the UK. London saw the sharpest surge. Registered boats in the capital nearly doubled between 2012 and 2018, jumping from 2,326 to 4,098, and housing costs drove almost all of that growth. What makes this work financially comes down to one specific category of boat dweller called a continuous cruiser. These are people who skip permanent moorings entirely and move their vessel every 14 days, drifting along Britain's canal network in a slow, constant loop. No fixed address, no mooring fees, and in most cases, no council tax. Just a boat license and the open water. A typical annual license for a 50 to 56-foot narrowboat runs approximately £900 to £990 per year, and total annual costs for a continuous cruiser, covering the license, insurance, fuel, gas, maintenance, and hull blacking, lands somewhere between £2,800 and £6,400. That's the full annual bill, not monthly, not weekly. Set that against the national average private rent of £1,367 a month, which adds up to over £16,000 a year, and the comparison becomes staggering. An entire year of continuous cruising costs less than what many Londoners hand over in 2 months. None of this comes without trade-offs, though. Moving every 2 weeks is a logistical constant. Space on a narrowboat is extremely tight. Winters on the water hit hard. Facilities stay basic, and you handle your own water supply, your own waste, and your own heating. Finding the next safe mooring spot becomes an ongoing puzzle. Permanent moorings push costs higher. Marina fees range from roughly £1,500 a year in rural stretches to £4,000 or more on average, and significantly more in London. But even with a mooring, canal boat living stays dramatically cheaper than conventional renting. What's emerged is one of the UK's most visible alternative housing movements, a floating counterculture powered not by ideology, but by economics. People didn't choose the water to make a statement, the land simply priced them out. And if floating on Britain's canals sounds unconventional, our next entry pushes alternative living even further, because in Wales, a planning policy exists that lets you build a home on open countryside if you can prove something most people can't. Number 8. One Planet Development Wales. Build a home on open land legally. Back in 2010, the Welsh government introduced a policy called One Planet Development under Technical Advice Note 6, and it does something almost unheard of anywhere in the United Kingdom. It lets individuals build a permanent home on open countryside, land where construction would normally be banned outright, provided they can demonstrate an exceptionally sustainable way of living. The bar sits high. Zero-carbon construction is mandatory. All energy must come from renewable sources. Roughly 60% of your food needs must come from the land within 5 years, and you have to show that biodiversity on the site improves. Annual monitoring reports are required, and failing to comply can mean the dwelling gets removed. Meet those requirements, though, and you can legally construct a permanent home on agricultural land, the kind of land that in parts of West Wales costs around £8,000 per acre. By the end of 2021, 39 out of 55 determined applications had received approval, with 87% of those coming after 2016.
For a policy this unusual, that approval rate runs remarkably high. The catch is obvious. This isn't buying a house off a listing. This is committing to a fundamentally different existence where you grow your own food, generate your own power, and build your own shelter, often from natural materials. The investment isn't financial, it's physical, intellectual, and deeply personal. For those ready to make that commitment, One Planet Development opens a pathway that exists nowhere else in the UK. A legal route to building from scratch on affordable land with no mortgage, no rent, and no landlord. Just you, the earth, and a government inspector who'll check your compost heap once a year. If One Planet Development sits on the radical edge, our next 3 entries pull us in the opposite direction, back through time, to communities designed by some of the most famous industrialists in British history, where affordable housing wasn't a happy accident but the founding purpose.
Number 7. Port Sunlight, Wirral, the Soap King's village that still stands. Construction started in 1888, the year William Hesketh Lever, who later became Viscount Leverhulme, broke ground on a model village for the workers of his soap factory. He named it Port Sunlight after the company's flagship product. By 1914, over 800 houses stood within the village, accommodating 3,500 people and designed by more than 30 different architects. And today, Port Sunlight holds over 900 Grade 2 listed buildings spread across 130 acres. The Port Sunlight Village Trust currently owns and lets around 300 properties, which accounts for less than a third of all homes in the village, since many were sold into private ownership during the 1980s. PSVT rents start at around £600 per month for a one-bedroom apartment in a country where the national average runs more than double that figure, and 54 properties in the village still carry what are known as fair rent tenancies, locked at rates well below market value. The waiting list for a Port Sunlight property currently stretches to approximately 18 months. Port Sunlight is not rent-free. What it demonstrates, though, carries real weight. When housing was built for people rather than profit, and when a trust structure blocks speculation from entering the picture, costs stay low across an entire century. Lever started building this village in 1888, and it remains affordable in 2026. That's 138 years of resistance to market pressure, built into the legal structure from day one. One more detail adds a different kind of color to the place. Hume Hall in Port Sunlight hosted Ringo Starr's official debut with the Beatles on August 18, 1962, and the village later served as a filming location for Peaky Blinders. Port Sunlight wasn't the only industrialist's experiment in housing, though. Across the Midlands, a chocolate maker was building something even larger.
Number 6. Bournville Village Trust, Birmingham. The Cadbury family's answer to the housing crisis. George Cadbury relocated his chocolate factory to a site south of Birmingham in 1879 and gave the location its name, Bournville. 14 years later, he purchased 120 acres of surrounding land and started planning a model village for his workforce. The Bournville Village Trust came into existence in 1900. That trust now manages approximately 8,000 homes across 1,000 acres, providing housing for over 23,000 people. More than 4,000 of those homes operate as social rentals, and only 1.5% of all properties carry market-rate leases. Every penny of surplus feeds back into the community. Social rents at Bournville follow the government-regulated formula, capped at CPI plus 1%, which typically lands them 50 to 60% below local market rates. The trust doesn't offer free housing, but when half the country spends a third or more of its income on rent, a 60% reduction reshapes an entire life. Bournville's Quaker origins still echo through the rules. No pubs or licensed premises exist anywhere in the village. George Cadbury believed alcohol fed poverty, and that prohibition holds today, more than 125 years after the village was founded.
Growth continues too. Lightmoor Village in Telford, sometimes called the Second Bournville, is an 800-home development expected to reach completion around 2026. And if you want to see what happens when a model village earns UNESCO World Heritage status, we need to head north to Scotland, to a place where a man named Robert Owen attempted to redesign society itself.
Number 5. New Lanark, Scotland, where the world's first nursery school met affordable housing. David Dale founded New Lanark as a cotton milling village in 1785, but it was Robert Owen, who assumed management in 1799, who turned it into one of the most ambitious social experiments in recorded history. Owen cut working hours, banned child labor for anyone under 10, introduced free healthcare and cooperative stores, and established what historians widely credit as the world's first nursery school. At its peak, over 2,500 people called New Lanark home. Cotton production continued until 1968, and the village began to crumble. The New Lanark Conservation Trust, established in 1974, stepped in to block demolition. UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site in 2001. Approximately 65 households, around 130 people, live in New Lanark today in a mix of private and social housing. The village occupies a dramatic gorge carved by the River Clyde, and its national significance earned a place on the Clydesdale Bank £20 note in 2009.
What New Lanark shows is that social housing and world-class heritage can share the same postcode, literally built into the same stone. Owen's belief in affordable, dignified housing for working families felt radical in 1800. And the fact that people still live here at affordable rates in 2026 says something about what endures when the foundations are right. If New Lanark captures what one visionary could accomplish in the 18th century, our next entry reveals what a community pulled off in the 21st, in one of Britain's most deprived neighborhoods, using houses that sold for £1 each.
Number 4. Granby Four Streets CLT, Liverpool, £1 houses and a Turner Prize. The Granby Four Streets in Toxteth are Victorian terraces built between the 1870s and the 1900s. After the 1981 Toxteth riots, the neighborhood collapsed. By 2010, more than half of the roughly 200 houses stood empty, boarded up and abandoned. Liverpool City Council wanted demolition. The residents wanted something else. What they built was the Granby Four Streets Community Land Trust, formed in November 2011. 13 properties changed hands from the council for £1 each under the Homes for a Pound scheme. Architecture Collective Assemble then stepped in to renovate 10 of those houses, designating 5 for social rent and selling the other 5 at £92,000 apiece, below the Liverpool average of roughly £121,000, with an anti-gentrification resale clause written into every transaction to block future speculation. Nobody predicted what happened next. In 2015, Assemble won the Turner Prize, Britain's most prestigious contemporary art award, carrying a £25,000 purse. They became the first collective in the prize's history to take it home.
and they want it for work on these streets. That's the power sitting inside a community land trust. The land stays in collective ownership, permanently locked out of the speculative market. You can't flip these houses, hoard them, or convert them into investment vehicles. The community holds the land, the community writes the rules, and housing stays affordable not for a season, but in perpetuity.
Over 350 CLTs now hold legal incorporation across England and Wales, with 1,711 affordable homes completed and 5,413 more in the pipeline. A 2023 report estimated that CLTs carry the potential to deliver 278,000 new community-led homes with a social value reaching £1.2 billion. CLT housing isn't free. Standard affordable tenures apply, social rent at roughly 50 to 60% of market rate, shared ownership, and discounted sale. But the underlying principle changes everything. Strip the land out of the market, and housing costs stay down. Not for a year, not for a decade, but permanently. To see that principle stretch to its absolute limit, we need to cross into the Scottish Highlands, because the statistic you're about to hear might be the most extraordinary housing figure in the entire United Kingdom.
Number 3. Scottish Crofting, where the median annual rent is £32. £32 per year, not per week, not per month, per year. That figure represents the median annual rent paid by crofting tenants in Scotland, drawn from the Scottish Government's Economic Condition of Crofting report, covering 2019 to 2022. 61% of crofters pay less than £51 annually, and the mean annual rent lands at £133.95. Crofting is a form of small-scale agricultural land tenure found only in the Scottish Highlands and Islands. More than 20,000 crofts exist across over 750,000 hectares, and 33,000 people live in crofting households. The system grew from tragedy. During the Highland clearances of the 18th and 19th centuries, thousands of families were forced off their land. The backlash produced the Crofters Holdings, Scotland, Act of 1886, a piece of legislation sometimes called the Magna Carta of the Gaeldom, which granted crofters security of tenure, fair rent, and the right to pass their croft to the next generation. That rent covers bare land only, meaning the crofter builds and maintains their own house and outbuildings. Tenant crofters also hold a statutory right to purchase their croft at a fixed price of 15 times the annual rent. If your annual rent comes to £32, you can buy the croft for £480. Before you start browsing for available crofts though, the trade-offs need attention. Crofters must live on or within 32 kilometers of their holding and must actively work the land. Most crofts can't sustain a family on their own, as the average annual income from crofting activities sits at just £4,538, and 38% of crofters pull in no crofting revenue at all. Outside employment fills the gap. Support exists. The Crofting Agricultural Grant Scheme covers up to 80% of costs for new entrants, and the Croft House Grant Scheme assists with building or improving homes. The Crofting Commission based in Inverness oversees the entire system, and a new Crofting and Scottish Land Court Bill entered Parliament in June 2025, reaching Stage 1 by early 2026. What crofting represents feels almost unthinkable in the rest of the UK, a system where annual land tenure costs less than a single night in a mid-range hotel. Comfortable it isn't. Easy it definitely isn't. It demands a kind of self-sufficiency most modern Britons have never attempted. But it's real, it's legal, and the framework has functioned for nearly 140 years. The final 2 entries on this list carry us to the oldest form of social housing on Earth, a tradition that has sheltered people in Britain for over 1,000 years and is right now, in 2026, expanding faster than it has since the Victorian era. Number 2. Hospital of St. Cross, Winchester, 900 years of providing a home. The Hospital of St. Cross and Almshouse of Noble Poverty in Winchester holds the title of oldest charitable almshouse in England still serving its original purpose. Henry of Blois, Bishop of Winchester and grandson of William the Conqueror, founded it between 1132 and 1136. That's approaching 900 years of continuous operation. 25 elderly men, known as the Brothers, live within its walls, split between 2 orders. The Black Brothers belong to the original foundation and wear a Silver Cross of Jerusalem badge. The Red Brothers sit within the Order of Noble Poverty, established in 1445 by Cardinal Beaufort, and wear claret robes carrying the cardinal's insignia. Admission requires that residents be single, widowed, or divorced over 60 years of age and no longer employed. What they receive in return is housing inside a Grade 1 listed medieval complex of extraordinary beauty. A tradition stretching back almost to the founding day still survives. Any visitor to the Hospital of St. Cross can request the Wayfarer's Dole, a horn cup of ale, currently London Pride brewed by Fuller's, and a morsel of bread. That custom has been honored for close to 900 years without interruption. St. Cross isn't just an almshouse. It's living evidence that providing housing based on need rather than ability to pay isn't some recent invention. The tradition predates the Magna Carta, predates Parliament, and predates the Bank of England by more than 560 years, and St. Cross belongs to a much wider network. Across the United Kingdom, over 30,000 almshouse dwellings are managed by more than 1,600 independent charitable trusts, sheltering approximately 36,000 people, and supported by around 12,000 volunteer trustees. The Almshouse Association, established in 1946, represents roughly 95% of them. Almshouse residents are licensees rather than tenants, and they pay a weekly maintenance contribution instead of rent, a contribution that covers upkeep and maintenance rather than generating profit. Housing benefit can cover up to 100% of that contribution in many cases, which makes housing effectively free for those on qualifying benefits. Some smaller, well-endowed charities set their contributions as low as £25 per week. One statistic from a 2023 Bayes Business School study reveals something striking. Researchers analyzed up to 100 years of records from 15 almshouses and found that a 73-year-old man entering the charter house could expect to live 2.4 years longer than peers from the same socioeconomic background. That represents an extra 15% of remaining lifetime, attributed to community bonds, social belonging, and reduced isolation. Almshouses don't just erase your biggest expense. They might actually extend the years you have left. Which brings us to number 1, because while the Hospital of St. Cross embodies 900 years of tradition, the top of this list captures where that tradition is heading next.
Number 1. Appleby Blue, London. The future of social housing just won Britain's biggest architecture prize. A new almshouse opened its doors in Bermondsey, South London in 2023. Called Appleby Blue, it contains 57 apartments for residents aged 65 and over, with 11 fully wheelchair accessible. United St. Saviour's Charity, an organization with nearly 500 years of history behind it, developed the project, and Witherford Watson Mann Architects designed it. In October 2025, Appleby Blue collected the Ribba Sterling Prize, the highest honor in British architecture. The jury's words were direct, calling it a clarion call for a new form of housing at a pivotal moment. Rents at Appleby Blue are capped at social housing levels, and in a borough where private rents regularly exceed £2,000 a month, residents pay a fraction of that figure. For those qualifying for housing benefit, the effective cost can reach zero. Appleby Blue isn't a one-off either. A second almshouse from the same developer, Edward Edwards House, carrying 64 units for over 55s, broke ground in Blackfriars in January 2026. Recent completions around the country include the Elizabeth Twining Almshouses in Richmond in 2024 and Dovehouse Court in Cambridge, also completed in 2024, which earned Passive House certification. 1,000 new almshouse homes were created in the decade to 2020 alone, and the current pace of building has been described as many hundreds per year. Almshouses are expanding faster than at any point since the Victorian era. That's what earns this the number 1 spot. Not because almshouses are the absolute cheapest option, though at £25 a week in some cases they come extremely close. Not because they're the most radical concept, though a model predating the Norman conquest is hard to top on that front. Almshouses claim the top position because they represent the form of near rent-free living that is actively and measurably growing right now in 2026. While the rest of the country argues over housing policy, planning reform, and rent control, almshouses are quietly doing what they've done for 1,000 years. They provide homes to people who need them, funded by charity, shielded from speculation, and rooted in the simplest idea imaginable, that shelter is a need and not a commodity. The biggest expense in British life, the one dictating where you live, whether you can work on your own terms, whether retirement is possible, whether your children can afford to stay in the city they grew up in, that expense doesn't have to define your existence. These 10 communities prove it. Property guardians paying £60 a week in converted police stations. Crofters paying £32 a year on Highland land. Canal boats running less than £6,400 a year in total living costs. Almshouses where housing benefit covers every penny. Victorian model villages that have held affordable for over a century. Community land trusts locking speculation out permanently. A Welsh planning policy allowing homes on open countryside,
and the oldest almshouse in England, still sheltering people after nearly 900 years. These aren't fantasies and they aren't loopholes. They're real places with real residents living real lives, right now, in the United Kingdom, with their biggest expense cut to almost nothing or removed entirely. The real question isn't whether rent-free living exists in Britain, because it clearly does. The real question is whether you're ready to look beyond the system that insists it doesn't. If this video shifted how you think about housing in the UK, hit the like button now. Subscribe if you haven't, because this channel covers places and possibilities that most won't touch. And send this to someone feeling crushed by rent, because the biggest expense in British life didn't vanish by accident in these communities. Some people engineered it out, others walked away from it on their own terms, and a few have been living without it for nearly 1,000 years. Drop a comment with which number caught you off guard, or which one you'd never try. Either way, thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.